the Bears beat the Buccaneers, and Matt Nagy, coach of the Bears, says it's not always pretty. It hasn't been pretty yet at all this year, but they're 4-1. Good morning to you, our audience on Peacock and Sirius XM Channel 211, the Dan Patrick Channel, and NBCSN if you're watching the re-air at 9 Eastern, and Sky Sports NFL, 7 o'clock local time, UK and Ireland, and anyone who may be listening on the podcast. Good morning to you, Peter King. Welcome back. How's everything?
Everything's going good, Mike. You know, when I hear Nick Foles say, it's like a good old street fight in Philly and all that, you look like a minister. You've never been in a street fight in your life. But I'll tell you,
that's
the good thing.
That's part of his appeal as a quarterback.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just going to say the good thing about Foles, at least to me, is that you have to turn on the television and watch the game when Nick Foles plays. Because in the middle of the first half, did you think that Nick Foles was going to be one of the heroes here? I mean, you got to be kidding me. But he's just got this knack. I don't even know what it is. But he's got this knack for being really pretty good and sometimes great when it's vitally important.
Two observations. First of all, wouldn't you love to see one of these debates, whether it's a local race, a national race, or anywhere in between, where there would be the exchange we just had of you go ahead, no, you go ahead? That would be something if we could just see that one time. So hopefully we're setting the example for America and the rest of the world when it comes to debate etiquette. Second of all, when he missed, and I believe it was Allen Robinson on 3rd and 2, second drive of the game, wide ass open, as Bruce Arians would say. I'm just quoting Bruce Arians. I'm not using that language myself. I'm just using language that Bruce Arians used when he was a commentator for 1 year. But anyway, when whoever it was wide ass open, I said that's exactly why Mitchell Trubisky got benched. That's what Nagy told me 12 days ago when he had the gut feeling to remove Trubisky from the game against the Falcons when they were down 16 points. Trubisky's not getting it done on 3rd down and in the red zone. And Foles hadn't been getting it done. And then all of a sudden he does. That is the magic of Nick Foles. You never know when it's going to flip. And when it does, he's smart. There's an urgency to him, like, let's go. Let's hurry up to the line. Let's get another play before it goes away. Let's go. Let's hurry. Yeah. And that's what's amazing about it. And also that quality of on any given play, it looks like someone's going to hit him in the right spot, and he's going to, burst into 20 pieces. I'm exaggerating, just 10 pieces. But, he doesn't look like a guy who should be out there taking that kind of abuse, but he constantly does, and he just gets up and he keeps going.
Mike, I think we just buried the lead, didn't we?
What's that?
We buried the Tom Brady lead. The GOAT is the GOAT.
True. Yeah, that's true. You're right. No, we found a way. But no, we got 2 hours. We got 2 hours to get to that one. Let's praise the Bears. We did bury the lead, but let's praise the Bears because, I do radio twice a week in Chicago, and they've been so confused and ambivalent about this team. They start off 3-0, and look, here's the reality. When you do that Sunday, Thursday turnaround, you could pick up 2 losses just like that, and all of a sudden, Sunday morning you're 3-0 and everything's great. Thursday night you're 3-2, and what the hell's wrong? And I thought they were going to lose. I thought that would be the narrative today. Well, the Bears were, who we thought they were, and not in the Denny Green sort of way. And now they're 4-1, and what a different vibe, all because they engineer a late drive and take the lead, and then they hold on, in part because the GOAT pulled a Brian Hoyer / Chris Webber, where he got confused. He thought he had another down, so instead of trying to get the first down on what was 4th and 5, he thought it was 3rd and 5, so he threw the ball farther down the field. It was an ugly throw. It had no chance of being caught, and then he's doing this. Hi, Tommy. Hi. Yeah, he's doing this. Unless he was trying to pull some sort of Jedi mind trick on the officials, that's one of the most stunning absences of awareness that I've ever seen from an experienced, smart quarterback, Peter. Let's do the sound. Here's Tom Brady, and let's do this. Let's hear from Tom. Let's give him a chance to defend himself before we rip him any farther. Here's Tom Brady or Bruce Arians, or maybe both, on what happened on that fourth down that really was a fourth down.
Yeah, we just you're up against the clock and you're up against I knew we had to gain a chunk, so I should have been thinking more first down instead of chunk on that down. So, yeah, I knew we needed a chunk, and I was thinking about more yardage, and then it was bad execution. And we had a great opportunity there, so just didn't execute when we needed to.
Did he not know it was fourth down?
Yeah, he knew.
Yeah, you know what that was? That was I don't want
Brady.
Go ahead. Again,
nobody asked Tom Brady, did you know it was fourth down? I got the transcript of the quotes, and I read them this morning, and he was not asked the question, did you know that was fourth down? And so I still don't know his answer to that question because he wasn't asked that question. So, but again, there's a 98% chance we know the answer to the question, but I wish he was asked the question. Right, straight out. Did you not know it was fourth down? Or did you know it was fourth down? But the one thing about that play, Mike, I went back and watched it. I taped the game, and I went back and watched it. And on that specific play, he had the young running back, Keyshawn Vaughn, about 3 yards from the first down, and he was not covered. Now, there was a linebacker lurking, waiting to clean up whatever there was over the middle of the field, okay? But if Brady had thrown the ball to Keyshawn Vaughn, who was uncovered 3 yards from the first down, if he had thrown the ball to him, I think he would have had at least an 80% chance of making the first down. And then what would have happened? They would have gone to the line of scrimmage, hustled to the line, and basically spiked the ball. And then, it had 25 seconds and first down to get the ball maybe 15 yards further down the field to get into field goal range for suck up. But obviously, and the decisions he made on all three of the throws, his three last throws, none of them were very good. And none of them were very close, quite honestly, except the one that clanged off Gronk's hands. But it just was a very, very ugly final series for somebody who should be used to shining in those final series.
Yeah, you make a great point, Peter, because when the Bears mismanaged the clock on their final drive that allowed Tom Brady to have 1 minute and 17 seconds, actually 1 minute and 13 seconds, 73 seconds on the clock to try to go down and get the game-winning field goal, or at least set up the game-winning field goal from Ryan Succop. Everyone was like, uh-oh, now you've done it, Bears. Now by throwing the ball on second down and not taking more time off the clock, now you've really screwed it up. And there was just this anticipation that it was inevitable because we've seen it before. But, I think that one thing that we need to remember, and the narrative has always been with Tom Brady, at least over the past 10 years, that if you can get pressure up the middle and hit him early and hit him often, that rattles him for the rest of the game. Well, last night was an occasion where they were getting the pressure around the edges. Khalil Mack was Khalil Mack, the Khalil Mack that arrived in Chicago 2 years ago on that Labor Day weekend trade with the Raiders. And that was the first thing I thought of. Well, yeah, they got 73 seconds left for this final drive, but is anyone going to block the Bears? Because it's pointless to think you're going to get down the field if these guys are going to tee off. And he did a good job of not getting hit on that last drive, but maybe that potential for getting hit, potential for getting sacked, and the clock keeps running, rushed him to make throws before he was ready to do it. And that, again, is the benefit, and that's maybe the only way to crack the code on Tom Brady. You got to hit him enough early in the game so when the game's on the line, he's jittery and he's rushed because he's concerned that here it comes again.
He should be concerned last night because Donovan Smith and Tristan Worfs were awful. They were awful. You don't, the Bucs think, and as somebody who's covered this team quite a bit in the last 6 months, the Bucs have thought that they had their tackle problems solved when they drafted Tristan Worfs. Well, to me, these guys look like they played like undrafted free agents last night. And look, at one point, Brady got, I think it was, he got hit by Mack on one of his sacks. And you could see, he looked up at Donovan Smith like, can you give me anything here? Can you at least deflect him? It was on the sack that Mack made where he ran inside. And I don't know, I don't think he was even touched by Donovan Smith. And Brady just took the Olay sack, because he wasn't going to be able to get out of the way. And look, that last drive, you got to pin the blame on Brady. You just do. But I could see why he was uncomfortable last night, because his tackles made it uncomfortable for him.
Yeah, and after Worfs, just 4 days earlier, had handled Joey Bosa. That's what made it even more stunning that they failed the way they did. They rang up 38 points against the Chargers defense, even without Derwin James, still a very good defense. And it felt like the Buccaneers were going to be able to get it done. They were moving the ball well in the first half. They were up. Those 2 touchdowns from the Bears late in the first half made the game a hell of a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be. But I was expecting shootout in the second half, but both defenses really clamped down. And, it was field goal. And there was that drive when, at one point, what was it, 1st and 34 or 2nd and 50? It was obscene with all the penalties. And that was when we saw the old school Tom Brady blowing a gasket and yelling. It looked like it's center Ryan Jensen, who took a really stupid 15-yard penalty. That offensive line of the Bucs has been very chippy this year. And you can't just walk up to a guy and headbutt him and expect there to be no consequence. That's what Jensen did. And you could see Brady was livid after that drive, Peter.
And, and well, he should have been. I mean, Mike, there will be teams this week that play a game in the NFL and do not get flagged 5 times for 40 yards. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in an 8-play sequence, or 7-play sequence, got flagged for 5 penalties for a total of 40 yards, and I'm not including the one that was declined, or I think it was offset. It was offset. So that is why, in my opinion, if I'm Arians, and look, after an emotional game like that, you probably don't want to go bat crap on your team. But when they sit down and watch the tape, Bruce Arians has to read his team the riot act, because they handed that game to the Chicago Bears. Handed it to them, silver platter, biggest cliche ever. Find me any other one and I'll give it to you. But they blew that game, period.
11 penalties for 109 yards for the Buccaneers, 6 for 66 by the Bears. And I thought this was the year that the officials weren't going to throw a lot of flags. I thought they were only calling clear and obvious fouls. I wonder how much of this is a reaction to maybe teams taking advantage of the willingness or lack thereof of the officials to throw flags, and maybe the officials are now having to reestablish themselves a little bit, because maybe there is a lot of clear and obvious stuff as teams try to test the limits of when that flag comes out, Peter.
And, Mike, look, every single year, the officials say it isn't true. It's true. Every single year, there is, if you look at a game in week 2, it's officiated different than a game in week 12, because the officials open up the season officiating with certain points of emphasis. And as the year goes on, they recalibrate as the year goes on. You get different messages from the officiating department in New York. And I'm sure based on a couple of the holding calls last night, were unbelievably ticky-tack. I'm trying to remember which one, but a couple of them were they were awful. They were terrible calls. Now, most of the calls that they made in the game were legit because both these teams are chippy. But I can tell you that this struck me. The NFL has made the line of demarcation on officiating. And last night was the game was officiated differently.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Back to a point you made earlier, because I'm fascinated by why Tom Brady wasn't asked specifically if he knew it was fourth down. And I think sometimes what happens is the media covering a given team sometimes is so smitten with a coach or a player that no one in the group wants to be the one who asks the question that could maybe piss off the person. But I'm looking at the transcript. Sometimes I think what happens is, and I want to go back and watch the video, and I think we both should, to get the question and the answer. Sometimes there's a little creative adjustment of the characterization of the question to take some of the sting out of the situation by an adroit PR staff that doesn't want that to be the talking point all day long, that does want that lead to be buried not just for a couple of minutes but for the whole show and beyond. But I'm going to be curious to watch the video, full question answer, to see exactly what he was asked, because it had to be asked. Look, you're Tom Brady. You've decided to keep playing at age 43. And in the critical moment of the game, the most important moment, it doesn't matter what happened before. You're down to one play. It's 4th and 5. Keep the drive alive. And if your reaction to that is to seek out the official and say, isn't it fourth down? My God, what an admission that is as to the lapse that you had in that moment. You can't say it was the crowd was too loud. That's for damn sure. You can't say you got confused, and I don't know what kind of communication is going on in the helmet to Tom Brady. My guess is the Tampa Bay sideline probably doesn't think Tom Brady needs a reminder that it's fourth down, and there wasn't a spike there that would cause you to lose track. Troy Aikman tried to throw him a lifeline and say, well, when you clock it once, you forget. Well, yeah, you're right, but he didn't clock it. There wasn't a spike on that drive. He had 4 cracks at it from 1st and 10, and he just had a mental lapse, which is jarring, even more jarring because it's him.
Yeah, and Mike, I think maybe what the Bucs do going forward is they basically now, in situations like this, if I were Arians, if I were Byron Leftwich,
Tom, it's fourth down. Sure. It's fourth down.
Right. You gotta say something in the guy's helmet to make absolutely sure. Because look, most teams, your helmet is live until 15 seconds on the play clock. So that is more than enough time to both give the play and say, hey, third down now, or whatever. You've got plenty of time to do it. So, obviously it's going to be a bitter lesson learned. And you know what I thought at the end of the game last night, Mike? I kept thinking to myself, okay, we don't really know who the Saints are right now, but we think we know that when they get Michael Thomas back, they're probably going to be at least as good or better than Tampa Bay, okay? And that was a game last night that could be the difference between getting a home game in the playoffs and getting a road game, having to go all on the road, to be a Super Bowl team. And so, look, you don't want to make too much of it. And, hey, the Bucs have their share of injuries too. They're throwing at guys that nobody in America's heard of all through the game last night. But I do think the Saints, when they get Michael Thomas back, and now with Traquan Smith being, emerging as a real legitimate weapon for them, I think they're going to be the Saints again.
There's a Saints-Buccaneers rematch looming on Sunday Night Football later in the year as well, and that could have major ramifications, especially with the Buccaneers. After those 3 straight wins and looking like everything was falling together, last night things were falling apart. And I had a vision there. And you know, I quit being a baseball fan in 1992 when the Pirates blew the NLCS to the Braves in Game 7. But one of the things I remember distinctly about watching baseball, playing some baseball not very well in my younger days, there's always communication among the fielders as to how many outs there are. There always is. Always. It's routine, right? The infielders tell the outfielders 1 out, 2 out. And I just have this image now of everyone on the Buccaneers telling Tom when it's 4th down. The center, the tackle, the tight end, the running back, to the point where he gets pissed off about that. I think I get the point. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for, because look, that moment, we don't know how it would have gone, right? But if he'd have known it was 4th down, he tries to get the 1st down. He gets the 1st down, the game's extended. We don't know what would have happened. Maybe they'd have won the game. Maybe the narrative today is Tom Brady pulls it out somehow, and they're 4-1. And the Bears are who we thought they were. But now the Bears are 4-1, and the Bucs are 3-2, and both teams are in divisions where they have an elite franchise that they're contending with, and the Bears are trying to catch the Packers, and the Bucs now have to stave off the Saints, who already have beaten them once. It was an incredible way to win. You know, it wasn't one of the high-scoring games that we've gotten used to, 34-31, 38-35. It was 20-19. Kind of feels old school to have one of the teams in the teens, but man, it was a compelling ending, especially because of the whole Brady angle. And also Foles. I mean, look, it's the Super Bowl 52 reunion. It was Brady's chance to stick it to Foles, and Foles stuck it to Brady.
I think what Tom Brady will do, I bet he did it on the plane on the way back to Tampa last night. I bet he watched the tape, and I bet he saw Keyshawn Vaughn wide open, about 3 or 4 yards from the sticks. And he's got to be thinking, I could have had the ball 12 yards from field goal range with 25 seconds to go. 2nd down, clock stopped. You know, he could have had 2 downs basically to get them in final field goal range. And I will bet a lot of money, if not last night, sometime today, he'll watch that and he'll say, man, I really, really cost us last night.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, and you wonder what it's going to spark for Tom Brady going forward. He was already determined. He was already, let's bleeping go all the time. Does this push him, if it's even possible, to a higher level of determination? Remember after week 1 when he got called out by Bruce Arians a couple of times? One of the reports, one of the Sunday Splash reports was he's even more determined and focused or whatever. It implied that he wasn't already. Well, he already was, and he found a way to become more determined after week 1. If it's even possible, if 130% is possible, that's going to be the Tom Brady determination level going forward after what happened last night. It was his first nationally televised game as a member of the Buccaneers at primetime. But he's had 2 games that were televised on big platforms. Week 1, late afternoon, and then week 5, primetime. He lost both of them. He didn't look particularly good in either of them, and he's keenly aware that the ratings are off the charts in Boston for these games. He's human. He gets it. It's got to drive him crazy, Peter. He's on these big platforms, and he's not showing he can thrive without Bill Belichick. And chances are, if that was a Patriots game last night, Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels would have made damn sure that Tom Brady knew it was 4th down, which gets back to the whole who is it, right? Who is it? Which is it? Is it the coach? Is it the quarterback? So and Matt Casey makes a good point. They didn't let Hoyer know he was out of timeouts on Monday night. So I don't know who gets the blame or the credit. But isn't that great? The perfect bookend, Monday, Thursday. Brian Hoyer makes a horrific mental lapse on Monday night that could have been avoided by the coaching staff. Tom Brady makes a horrific mental lapse on Thursday night.
I could see Brian Hoyer. It looked like he was looking up at the official toward the end of the half, at the end of the first half, and he was saying, was that wrong? And you know, because it was just such a shocking decision to make. I mean, how do you make that decision? And I'm sure that Tom Brady will be feeling the exact same thing about how this one ended too.
And from the actual audio of the press conference, Brady was asked, was it clear for you guys whether it was third or fourth down on that last play? So the transcript, as we've seen before, the transcript creatively summarized by way of the question posed to not make something that was already a big deal an even bigger deal. How about this one, too, before we give the Bears some more props on the way out the door for this segment? Brady, after the game, beeline to the locker room. And my first thought was, hey, good, because that's what we should have seen all year long. The COVID protocols require, unenforced to this point, require the players to avoid getting within 6 feet of each other. We saw the photo earlier this week of Stephon Gilmore, who would test positive the next morning for COVID-19 in the face of Patrick Mahomes after the Monday night game in Kansas City. I don't think Brady was just being a conscientious practitioner of COVID hygiene. I think it was get me the hell out of here. And just, it's fine. Look, Nick Foles was out there looking around like, where the hell's Tom Brady? But I think that this wasn't Tom trying to avoid getting infected. I think this was Tom getting the hell out of there while he could.
If the NFL before the season told players that they could not do a jersey exchange after the game, if they did that, which they did, why, after what happened this week, did they not tell players and coaches leave the field after the game without exchanging pleasantries and hugs and without doing the prayer circle? Leave the field without doing all that. I don't understand why the NFL did not do that this week, because absolutely unequivocally, Patrick Mahomes and doing some sort of semi-hug with Gilmore after the game. And then Patrick Mahomes on Wednesday sounding like I didn't see it, but sounded like he apologized for it, and almost profusely. So, I mean, my point is, what exactly is going on with these protocols? If you're going to be serious about them, at the end of the game, get off the field. None of the hugs, have a hug by text. I just simply do not understand why that was not done this week. That's an opportunity lost.
And there's a strange mixture of optics and science that the NFL is pushing here, because one of the things I did was I circled back to the league and I said, whatever happened to the restriction on being within 6 feet of each other after games? And they said it's still the rule. And then they sent me quotes from CDC guidelines saying that brief interactions don't put anyone at risk. Well, then why do you have the rule? Why are you undermining your own rule? Why don't you either get rid of the rule or enforce the rule, but don't undermine your rule, which, confusion about what the rules really are and what the procedures really are. It's kind of been our life for the last 7 months as we try to figure out what this virus is all about. But I think they know it looks bad. They don't think it's a significant risk of virus transmission, but it does look bad, especially given everything the NFL has been going through this year. We'll be obviously talking about that coming up as it relates to the major surgery the NFL has performed on the schedule yet again. Let's give the Bears just a little love on the way out, though. Nick Foles, as Matt Nagy said after the game, this is what he does, right? It's not going to be dominant. He's not going to throw 7 touchdown passes, although he once did throw 7 touchdown passes. Was it 6 or 7? Remember when he was with the Eagles and they
7.
played the Raiders? It was 7. 49-0,
Raiders,
I think.
On the road. I think it was 7. Yeah.
Crushed the Raiders that day. He's not going to do that at this stage of his career. Watch, he'll do it next week. He's going to have flashes where he gets it done, and he's more likely to get it done when the game's on the line. He steps up in those spots. I don't think he's a great practice player, and under normal circumstances early in a game, he's not going to be a gunslinger. But when they need it, when the opportunity's there, he can make that big throw. He stands in the pocket. The players love him. And he led the drive that won the game, period. In a game against Tom Brady, both quarterbacks had chances to lead game-winning drives. One did, one didn't, just like the Super Bowl.
Watching Foles, the one thing that really occurred to me during the course of this game is this is the perfect team for him to be the quarterback of right now, because the Bears have a good chance most weeks of playing low-scoring games. Their defense is really good. Their rush is oppressive. Khalil Mack has been reborn after a injury-plagued year last year. And so this is, if you're going to play games in the 20s, you know, while so many teams in the league are playing games in the 30s, the Chicago Bears, I would say, are going to play games on average in the 20s this year. And you like having a guy like Nick Foles, who is going to take care of the football for the most part, and who, when the game is really tight, times are tough, you got to make a play or two, he's got a good chance of making the play. And he's never going to have gaudy numbers, but he's the kind of guy who I think you want on your team in crunch time because you trust him. You've seen him do it before.
And that Khalil Mack stat line is reduced to writing by Matt Casey in the document that we use as our guidance for the show. 2 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, 1 batted pass, and 1 ragdoll toss of a rookie offensive lineman. That moment was like, what in the hell? It was a one-armed. It was WWE. They were showing the WWE commercials all night long. It was fitting. They should use that clip in the further cross-promotion that Fox does of its WWE properties. And Khalil Mack just taking Tristan Worfs. And, I mean, I think Tristan Worfs was saying, stop the ride. Stop the ride. I want to get off. And he did it all with one arm. All right, let's take a break, as mentioned.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.